With political campaigns in full swing ahead of the 2023 election, politicians are moving around the country, consulting with their stakeholders and meeting with the masses, brandishing their manifestos. Presidential candidates are reeling out their plans for the country. For the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, his manifesto tagged Renewed Hope 2023 prioritizes security, economy, agriculture, health, and education as key areas for urgent intervention. For the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, his manifesto tagged My Covenant with Nigerians is hinged on a 5-point agenda of restructuring education, economy, security, and national unity. For the candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, his policy document tagged Our Pact with Nigeria is premised on a 7-point agenda. There are security, economy, restructuring, youth engagement, and human capital development. These are some of the things we'll be talking about. Of course, all the other political parties also have their manifestos tagged different ways, and they're saying, mentioning some of those things that the masses would like to hear right now. Joining me in the studio is managing editor of the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adio. It's nice to have you join us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Great, you're welcome. And I also have in the studio public affairs analyst Ziggy Ibe. He is also a member of the Presidential Campaign Committee spokesperson. Ziggy, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, let me start with you, Ayodele. Manifestos are document world over. Everyone knows if you're going into a political campaign, the party has a manifesto, all the programs are lined out, and all of that. But make us understand, what makes a manifesto a document that the people should believe in?
Well, it's a bit of a social contract between you and the electorates. You have promised them that this is what you are going to do should they elect you into office. And in a contract, if they fulfill their own part of the bargain to elect you into office, you are duty bound to fulfill your own part should you eventually get into office. So I think it's an important piece of document that articulates clearly what the candidate wants to do for the people, which is the primary concern of the voters and the electorates, because they care not why you want to be president. They care about what you are going to do for them at the end of the day. And I think that at the end of the day, politicians live or die based on their ability to fulfill their promises and obligations to the people. And when they fulfill those promises to the people, whatever those promises are, their stay in power is almost guaranteed. But once they fail to fulfill the promises that they have made to the people, they set themselves up, for political crisis. I mean, the Americans have just finished the midterm elections, and, it said that Biden stopped what was bound to be a red wave. And I would argue exclusively that happened primarily because he kept to setting key promises. He said he was going to do student loans forgiveness. He stuck to the guns, he fought Congress, and he pushed that through. And young people rallied round and came out en masse to vote for his party and stop the red wave. So social contracts are political, manifestos are social contracts that the candidates make promises to the people, which they have to live up to should they eventually get into office if the people fulfill their own end of the bargain. And it's important to have the worldview of the person you are electing into office, to have some sort of an idea of what this person brings and what you can hold him to account to should he eventually get into office. And that, for me, is the reasons why candidates should put forward a manifesto and should be seen to defend the details of their manifesto.
All right. Ziggy, let's go back a little to history. In the First Republic, where we had the Action Group, the NCNC, and the MPC, we saw how clear their programs were, distinct from each other. Fast forward to the Second Republic, we also had the UPN, NPN, and all of that, and we also saw how distinct some of their political programs of those parties were. But right now, it looks like parties want to do almost the same thing that the other person wants. There's no distinction. Are you seeing distinction between one party program and the other party program?
Thank you so much. I think the distinction is in the individual.
Okay.
Who is coming into...
Not in the manifesto of the party.
Yeah, I will further explain that. The individual has set of ideas of what he wants to do when he gets to the office, okay? So also other individuals in other parties who has same ideas of what they want to do. But then what they do differently is the approach to what they meet on ground. Okay, going into the manifestos and what they've told the public they want to do is about putting down their thoughts, what they feel the society at that point needs. Okay, maybe what other administrations have not been able to give, then people are yearning for it. And because they are yearning for it, they feel, okay, yes, this area has not been fully done. When we get there, we are going to do it. This area is lagging behind. When we get there, we are going to do this. And so many other areas. Okay, and if you watch, just like sometimes when somebody accused the APC of plagiarizing the Hope 93, certain things we lacked then are still not being fulfilled. And nothing is wrong mentioning them that we are going, because if you look at where we are coming from, it is a backlog of issues we've not been able to tap. So many things remain the way they were. Since I was born, there are certain issues that have not been tackled. And nothing is wrong for anyone to come on board and say, look, I'm going to do this. Okay? So if you go to the renewed hope, it's all about what people lack, what they yearn for, where they intend to go, what they intend to have, the things they really at this point need, and it will suffice their need and their want. Okay, and if you have that handbook, it is a complete need, a complete giving to what people need, because it takes every details of human endeavor, and with a greater input from the master himself, the Bola Tinubu, he gave out his thoughts that, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to provide all this. All things being equal. Okay? So nothing is wrong if Mr. A says same thing as Mr. B did, because the problems seems to be interwoven. The troubles are not one.
It's the same people.
It is the same people. Yes, and the same need, a collective need of the people is what these people are trying to tackle. So one might mention exactly what other mentioned. So I don't think is out of place.
Okay, Adele, who owns the manifesto? Is it the party or the candidate?
Interesting question. Interesting question. I can't speak categorically but I can just say that, theoretically,
yes,
the party has an input in whatever manifesto that the candidate is putting forward, because he's also running on the platform of a political party. Yeah. So yes, to that extent, I want to safely assume that the manifestos that have been put forward are both a representative of what the individual candidate wants to achieve and what the party, in broader terms, seeks to want to achieve across the country. So there has to be a nexus at some point. Otherwise, there would be, a lack of coherence between the candidate and the party, which will breed friction. And of course, you can't make progress, in that kind of situation. So I want to believe that both the candidate and the party own the manifesto that are being put forward as we speak now.
All right. Now, Ziggy, from the perspective of Nigerians, because you were saying that, of course, what party A, B, C, D, or E is trying to put forward, they could look alike.
Yes, but the items might be different.
Right now, what from your perspective, what do Nigerians want right now? I know there can be many, but one would say what Nigerians are asking is not, Nigerians are not asking for too much.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
but what do Nigerians want right now?
Basic necessities of life is just goes beyond food, goes beyond something on the table, but it's very basic. Okay? And in one of the areas of the book, Renewed Hope, Ashwaju said, he will make sure no Nigeria goes to bed on empty belly. To me, that is very key. Okay, because like you said, Nigerians are not asking too much. If we are provided with a good road, which is included in the manifesto, if we are provided with a potable water, a drinkable water, is contained in the manifesto, then sufficient food, okay, that would guarantee a citizen for a night. That's what that means to me is that, as he said, nobody goes to bed on empty stomach, meaning that there will be food for all. Okay, and these are basic needs of human being. Other ones, yeah, we can categorize them under primary, secondary, and maybe when you have the surplus. But the primary ones is that you must have something inside your belly to provide you with the energy to work. And when that is not there, then the government is not doing enough. Okay? Then it goes to tell us that when you have enough food, you can now share with your neighbor. You can now sell the surplus. From the surplus, you can now get other needs that the family and other people would want to have. So I think there are basic needs to life. And these basic needs will be provided by anyone who comes to preside over the affairs of this country. And in the manifesto, all these are encapsulated. That when I get there, it's a social contract, but a bigger burden on who is coming. Because when all these are stipulated out and you don't follow them item by item, is a problem.
Okay, I like if you don't follow them, it becomes a challenge.
Yes.
Recall what Ziggy said earlier. You know, the same issues that Obafemi Awolowo campaigned with, or Nnamdi Azikiwe or Madu Bello, were the same thing Shagari and the others campaigned with in the Second Republic, were the same thing MK Abiola and Tofa campaigned with in 1993. It was the same thing that Obasanjo and the others campaigned in 1999. You know, and so we still have these basic issues: education, health, good road, housing, food security, you know, and all of that. We're still talking about this same basic thing for the past 4 or 5 decades. Now, talk to us about the need for the how, because it's easy to line up all of these things in manifestos and documents to say, okay, fine, this is the document. But the how of how to translate that document into what the people should, or what should be prosperity for the people, it seemed to be the challenge from the First, Second, Third Republic and even the Fourth Republic so far.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem that we haven't solved any major social problem in the last 40 years in Nigeria. And let's just take off from the renewed hope that you were just talking about. And clearly, one of the things that Ashwaju Bola Ahmed says he's going to do in that document is to essentially double GDP over his course of 8 years. Essentially, he wants the economy to grow by 10%. And, you know, to do that, he wants to expand, you know, the market economy. He wants to stimulate consumption by creating a credit system in the country. You know, he wants to create jobs, and to create jobs, he wants to implement an industrialization policy for him to achieve that. He wants to drive some sort of an agricultural revolution. Now, the question is, from what is stated in his document, if he implements those policies clearly, and for me, it's almost similar to what the South Koreans did between 1979 and 1988, and what the Brazilians did between 2002 and 2008. And in those two situations, South Korea moved from exporting about $150 million in a year to $160 billion in just 10 years, growing faster than industrialized nations did in 100 years. What the Brazilians also did was exceptional. Lula da Silva ensured that he moved 40 million people into the middle class from poverty by doing two critical things: opening the market economy and some sort of welfare system that put monies in the hands of the poor. So if Asiwaju Ahmed is able to do, as stated in his document, that he will promote a private sector-led economy, and on the other side, a welfare system that puts money in the hands of the poor, then we are likely to see that our economy will grow. I'm not as optimistic as his economist advisors are to say we're going to grow at 10% in the first 2 years. But I'll be cautiously optimistic to say we can grow at 4 or 5%. And if you maintain a 4 or 5% growth over the next 8 years, we are likely to be able to double GDP. We're likely to be able to create at least 10 million jobs. We're likely to be able to expand the economy. But the key, like you said, in how we can actualize this is by having a technical core, because that's what the Brazilians did and that's what the Koreans did. They ensured that the bureau that controlled and managed the economy and that managed the welfarist system were a group of technically competent individuals who had the finest education, who had the integrity, who were well-resourced to be able to implement the agenda of the president without any interference and to see through to a logical conclusion. So the difference here, or the devil now, will be in the ability to create a competent bureaucracy that will be able to implement those policies to the letter without being bogged down by our usual civil service bureaucracy where files aren't moving, where our guy is not in office today, where you are looking for director of implementation, you can't find him. If that happens, we're going to be in this same mess that we've been over a long period of time. But if Asiwaju is able to find not just the competent team in Aso Rock, but the competent team in the bureaucracy to be able to drive many of these policies and programs, then the hope that the document touts might just be realized in 8 years. And I usually don't buy the argument that countries cannot grow fast in 8 years. It's a fat lie, because I've given you two instances. It took 12 years for South Koreans to grow and modernize. It took 10 years for the Brazilians to lift 40 million people out of poverty. So we can achieve that in the next 8 years if we're able to implement these policies to the latter.
All right. It just boils down to remaining consistent with it. But however, we'll come back to this. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and on this segment, we've been talking about manifestos and how this is going to translate to prosperity for Nigeria. And the various political parties and their candidates have rolled out their manifestos. Nigerians now have all the documents and they are studying it. So as the campaigns are coming, everyone is going to be asking questions, looking at the manifesto and looking at the candidate and asking questions as the days roll by. Stay with us. We'll go on a short break. We'll be right back. All right, you're watching TVC Breakfast. We're looking at manifestos of political parties and what they mean to Nigeria and Nigerians right now. We have in the studio discussing this the managing editor of the Avalon Daily, Dele Adio. He's here, as we also have public affairs analyst Ziggy Ibe joining us right here in the studio. Now, Ziggy, let me come to you on this. From the manifestos that we have seen so far, you have mentioned the one of the renewed hope of the APC. Yep. There's also My Covenant with Nigerians by the PDP. There's also Our Pact with Nigeria by the Labour Party. All the other political parties have their own tags differently and all of that. But are you seeing what you want to see in this manifestos?
The frequent questions have got since we started discussing the renewed hope is what he said. How the implementations are going to be. And some of these things in the renewed hope, they are not rocket science in achievement. They are not. All you do is to organize skilled individuals, technocrats, those who speak and know their job. So I see no so much difficulty in getting it done. And more so when we are drawing our facts or drawing our beliefs from what Asiwaju had done in Lagos. He did it somewhere. He has done, so we draw our facts from where he has done it before. We follow his antecedent. And we said, if this were done in Lagos then, it could be replicated at the center. Because looking at the cosmopolitan nature of Lagos, Lagos is like a country in a country. Lagos is big. And we know how Lagos was before now. So the serenity we enjoy now was put together or was somebody's idea. All of them are found in the renewed hope. I've always advised each of us to have it so that as we roll out the programs in there, you will be able to see, okay, this is done, this could be done, and all that. Because he went ahead to itemize how he's going to do them, getting involved those who speak in the position of the knowledge, in the position of the know, and how to do them best. Getting the world-class individuals to perform this task is not rocket science. So it's doable. Some of the things he did in Lagos are still here. And they're still like a colossus speaking for him. And those are the things we say when he is at the center, he can replicate it. They can be done. They can be achieved. How are they going to be achieved? By getting individuals who have the knowledge, who have the wherewithal. Okay? The power project, electricity is a problem in the country, a big one. Because if you have electricity, you've solved almost half of the problem of the country. And in the renewed book, he said, I'm going to participate with individuals. I'm going to have a PPP arrangement. Areas where the government cannot do it, we invite individuals to really install their power and generate. And that is happening in Lagos. There are some places in Lagos here where they've not tested, they've not seen, they are not on the federal grid. But there's constant light there. That could be replicated. It could be done. And Tinubu said, if I enters, I'm going to allow states to generate their own grid, to generate their own light.
But that would require some constitutional amendment.
Yes, but it could be done.
It's doable.
It's doable.
Right.
So, however you want to get the problem solved is what we want. And since all of them are marshaled out in the book, so one-on-one will be tackling him and say, okay, you said this. This is where we are now. Can we do it? And that is the importance of this document. So that each of us could rely on it and begin to hold the person. This is what you said. You can't go differently from what you said. We are talking about agriculture. The way it was done in the past should be very, very different from the way it should be done now.
The world has moved on.
The world has moved on and far away from the old way it was done. Now it's mechanized. In fact, so many seedlings now are being grafted. So these are things, he said, I could do them.
Okay. Ideally, because the campaigns are here and the candidates are moving from place to place, what kind of questions should the masses be asking the candidates, especially considering the fact that, okay, the manifestos are out, the promises are being made, we'll do this, we'll do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to give you this, and all of that. But what kind of questions should the masses be asking the candidates?
I mean, the masses can ask all sorts of questions because it's their life, that is on the line. the quality of leadership will determine, what kind or what level of progress they are going to make over the next, 8 years. A guy who turns 22 next year, by the time whoever gets elected in 2023 will be leaving, will be 30 years old. That would mean an entire, your best years would have been gone. So it's your life on the line. And so you have to ask as much questions as possible as to how this person's policy is going to benefit you. And that's at the level of the citizens. But, at the level of the media, at civil society organizations, we may ask more critical questions. You say you want to do import substitution in your policy program. Is that going to affect trade relations with developed nations? Because on the one hand, while you are adopting a protectionist policy to allow local manufacturing thrive, you also want to sell your products in the international market. So how are you going to walk that fine line, where you protect your own market and you want to sell in an international market? So you want to hear from the candidate. If you say you want to restructure this country, what are the details upon which you are going to restructure the country? How are you going to push your restructuring agenda, and what is it going to look like at the end of the day? You say you want to reform the security architecture of our country. What does a reformed security architecture look like? How much is it going to cost you to recruit 100,000 new policemen or 100,000 new military personnel? Who is going to pay for this new recruitment? How is it going to affect budget deficits? And interestingly, how are you going to reduce budget deficits going forward? How are you going to grow our revenue? How you are going to cut spending? So these are details that the media and civil society organizations can press these candidates on, especially in town hall meetings going forward. And I expect to see many of that, where they can explain the nitty-gritty of their plans, to the Nigerian people. So we have some sort of clarity as to how they want to achieve what they want to achieve. And if they do fail, it could be maybe political issues that makes it difficult for them to push through some of the reforms that they want. But at least the Nigerian people have clarity as to what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it. And those are the kind of questions I think that, that the media and civil society and, of course, intellectuals, because I really want to see intellectuals get more involved. University lecturers, university professors. It's strange that decades ago during the military era, you had a lot of professors writing column at the back of newspapers. These days, we don't even see that again. So I want to see the academia a lot more involved to scrutinize the economic policies of these individuals, to write columns, to critique some of these policies. And I expect to see rebuttals from the campaign to also defend their positions and articulate what they are going to achieve going forward. So I really want to see an intellectually robust campaign, some sort of intellectually stimulating back and forth from the candidate and the intelligentsia, from the masses, and the political parties, because it's this amalgamation of ideas that can move our country forward, and not bickering and petty tokenist fighting here and there. And that's how I hope that this pans out.
All right. Now, there is the assumption in some quarters generally that the people don't always trust politicians, maybe because of things in the past where politicians they seem not to execute exactly what they have in their manifestos, like we mentioned earlier on, where from First, Second, Third Republic, and even the Fourth Republic, we're still mentioning some basic things about, basic amenities that government should have handled or taken care of long ago, and all of that. What will make Nigerians begin to trust their leaders, apart from just politicians? Because now we have politicians all over the place. By the time the elections are over, we're going to be talking about leaders.
Social distrust is an issue among us, okay? And that should be tackled headlong when a leader walks the talk. And some of the promises leaders do or they make are not met. And where they're not met, the populace or the electorates will just assume, yes, that's the way they are. And if you watch what has been going on, Bola Tinubu has been going around holding town hall meetings. Town hall meeting is an avenue where he interfaces with the public. Unfortunately, people don't attend as much as they should have, because that's the situation where you meet the candidate one-on-one to ask questions.
But if you mention the candidate of the APC that you mentioned earlier, most of the town hall meetings he has held are always packed full. Or you're talking in terms of Nigeria, the way they should turn out?
Yes, I'm talking about turnout should have been larger than that, okay? And sensitive questions, critical questions should be asked as to how to get all this done. You see, when we interrogate leaders, they know we know what we want. But coming on assumption basis that, yes, this is what they want, I'll give them, it looks lump sum. Okay, but when you are critical about what you want, asking direct and critical questions, getting exactly what you want to hear from a leader, it makes you comfortable. It makes you hold him to his word. But most times when town hall meetings are organized, like the one he last had at the agro-allied, you know, people attended, farmers attended, and questions were got from all quarters, okay? And you see, it is one assurance to get those questions answered. At least it gives you that belief that, look, he knows what we want. And it is one thing to tell you, yes, I know what you want. The other thing to deliver. And it is our belief earnestly that when somebody says, I can do this, having record of what he has done before, related to what he has said, then I think the belief system should obviously tell us that, yes, he can do it. Another challenge about our system that is very, very unique or peculiar is the kind of environment we find ourselves. The first thing I went to look at when I got hold of, when I had the renewed hope, was the security. Because if you look at the whole promises, and if security is not nipped or brought to a BRS minimum, we might not achieve as much as we would have. But he went ahead to tell item by item how he's going to bring down the security situation in the country.
Insecurity. Yeah.
The insecurity in the country. And his approach, his idea, his ways to go about getting it done is very clear. Okay? We are not saying, yes, this is done on its own, but there's a link road, there's a foothold to doing all this. And when they are done, then we have a better country.
Okay. We're wrapping up now, but let me ask you this. When it is one thing to, through your manifesto, Nigerians understand the vote you in and you win. It's another thing to get into the how of implementing all of the issues in the manifesto. It's also another thing for the ones who didn't win to begin to hold you to account as to drawing your attention to what you didn't do, what you are not doing, what you are overdoing, and things like that. So when it comes to holding leaders to account, one may say, okay, maybe in Nigeria we don't have it much in some areas and all of that, but talk to us, how should Nigerians hold their leaders to account, reminding them that this manifesto, remember, this is what you said you would do, especially when the elections come?
I think it's interesting you asked me that question, because I think that in Nigeria, we view political parties as, merely vehicles for winning elections. And, for me, that's just one aspect of political parties. Political parties are also there to provide opposition to governing parties. And by opposition, I'm talking constructive opposition, putting out alternative ideas and solutions, and of course, holding the government of the day to account, which is why it's interesting that in the British system of government, the opposition political parties are paid to do opposition work by the party in power. It's funny, but you're paying your your
opponent.
Your oppressors.
Yeah, but that's
All right.
that's the importance of political opposition, and so
Okay.
I expect that to happen. Whoever loses the election, hasn't lost his or her relevance.
At all.
It should continue, to uphold their own principles and hold the government of the day to account.
All right. We have to leave you here now. Thank you very much, Adele Adio, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And Ziggy, thank you very much for coming as well.
It's my pleasure.
Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
all of you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.